The NFL playoffs are here for the 2024-2025 season, and man, it's going to be a really interesting one, and so I'm going to go ahead and give you my predictions in this video. This video may be coming out after the first game started, but has been recorded before the first game, so no need to worry about that. Let's get right into it. So we're using the Playoff Predictor website, ignore all the ads, but we're going to go through every single game here, and if you want to see more videos like this, go ahead and leave a subscription here at the channel, like the video, because I make more videos like this, and as we get into the draft season, I'll be making more NFL draft videos in the NFL offseason. So let's go ahead and get into the first game, starting with the AFC. The Chargers versus the Texans. Now, this is a really interesting one, because the Texans are kind of like, they're there, but they're just in a really weak division, and they just ultimately, at least offensively, had a pretty poor season. They've had their moments. Joe Mixon has had his moments. You lose Tank Dell, you lose Stephon Diggs. It definitely doesn't help. I think the biggest thing is their interior kind of offensive line type of thing, and I think C.J. Stroud can still put on a dominant performance if given the opportunity. And so I would love to see that from the Texans, but again, I think their defense should be fine. We'll see what the Chargers try to do. They will try to pound the ball, of course. That's what Greg Roman loves to do. He wants to set the tone with the running game, but it doesn't mean he's not scared to pass it. You have one of the best quarterbacks in Justin Herbert. You have Ladd McConkey, who's having a wonderful season. You got some other guys there. Quentin Johnston, he's better than last year, so that's good. But ultimately, I think just the way the Texans have been playing recently, it's not looking too inspirational. To where I'm gonna pick the Chargers to ultimately win it. Now we have the Steelers versus the Ravens, and I think this one on paper is the game that's probably gonna be in the best chance to be a blowout. It sucks that this is a primetime game, but it's like the Steelers versus the Ravens, two classic teams that should have a good game regardless, there's still a chance that the Steelers can win. I'm going to pick the Ravens, and there's still a chance the Steelers can win. They beat them earlier, but right now, the way their offense is looking, it's not looking great. And I think if the Ravens just put it on early, the Steelers aren't going to be able to do much. So the Steelers defense is really going to have to come in huge. T.J. Watt, Alex Highsmith, that secondary, Minka, Joey Porter Jr., they're going to have to play well. Now, there's no Zay Flowers, so that is a weapon for the Ravens. That is gone, but they still have some other talented guys. Of course, they have Derrick Henry. Lamar Jackson is just a few possible MVP, possible back-to-back MVP, right? And Mark Andrews. So, there's talented guys. Rashad Bateman. Ultimately, I just think the Ravens offense might be a little too much for the Steelers. The Bills and Broncos, on paper, this doesn't look like a great game, but I think there's a chance this could be a really good game. I know a lot of people have talked about this being the best chance for a true upset, a 7-2 seed, right? And I think the Broncos have the juice. I think the defense is sneakily good. I'm not saying it's not like just okay good. It's good. I just don't know how many people kind of remember just how good that Broncos defense is, because there's not that many high-profile names except Patrick Surtain. That's not saying there's other really good players, but when you think of the Broncos defense, you think of Patrick Surtain, some other guys, and that's really it. You don't know these players like that, but the Bills, of course, have probably future MVP this season, Josh Allen, right? The Bills have been playing great offensively. The defense has been solid, right? So I think there's a good chance, there's a decent chance there's a chance the Broncos could win. I'm going to stick with the Bills because, you have the X factor in Josh Allen. You're playing a rookie QB, Bo Nix, even though I don't think that's the crazy thing to be like, oh, you're playing a rookie QB, you're going to lose. But it's just, I think when you play Josh Allen, he's going to be coming looking for revenge. He wants to put a statement out there going along with his possible MVP season. So we're going to go with the Bills over the Broncos. Heading to the NFC. The Vikings, who are a 14-3 5 seed, versus the Rams, who have a home game, or I guess technically a home game. It's going to be played in Arizona because of the wildfires, and I hope everybody's doing well there in California, because that is a horrendous scene. It's so insane. But for this, I'm going to say the Vikings are going to win. The Rams can put it on. The Vikings are obviously coming off a very disappointing game versus the Lions. The Rams can put it on offensively. I think you got a pretty good defensive line there. But I think overall, the Sam Darnold's going to bounce back. Kevin O'Connell, right? And I think they're just going to play their game, and I think defensively they'll do really good as well. Even though if you do have, top tier Cooper Cup playing, Puka Nacua, Matthew Stafford, all of them are on the same page. It could be scary for the Vikings. I think they're definitely a team that could beat the Vikings, but ultimately I think the Vikings have just had that type of season. They're playing well for the most part, and so I think they're gonna continue their season here. The Commanders and Buccaneers, I think, turns out to be I think a pretty interesting game, right? They played back in week 1. It was a pretty much domination from the Buccaneers, but now obviously a very different Commanders team, very different Buccaneers team, and so we're looking at that. I think I'm gonna pick the Commanders. I am a little biased, but I think the thing about the Commanders is that I think there's a chance they could have a really good passing game. Obviously, you're gonna have to look out for that pass rush, but in that defensive line. But the secondary is kind of beat up, and I think we saw that week 1 as well. But there's a chance Antoine Winfield Jr. might not be playing. Actually, I'm not too sure on his status. I'm actually gonna look that up right now. Is he playing? He will play, but again, they're gonna be a little banged up. I think as a runner, as a quarterback, Jaden Daniels feels a lot more confident than he was week 1, and I think this defense has played well, and of course Marshawn Lattimore is now on the team. Again, I'm not saying the Buccaneers can't win. I think this is going to be a good game, but I think right now, down the stretch, at least in wild card, I'm going to put my trust a little bit more in Jaden Daniels as of now. And then the Eagles versus the Packers. This game was going to be really interesting to see what happened with Jalen Hurts. With his injuries, concussion, but he's going to be ready to play. But again, I don't know how is it going to affect him, possibly because he was on that concussion protocol for quite some time. But of course, the Packers have their own injuries with Christian Watson. Jordan Love is a little banged up. They're going to lose some other guys. So ultimately, I think the Eagles just have the firepower. Saquon Barkley, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith. And I think that defense is going to be coming to play. So I'm going to pick the Eagles in the wild card. So let's move on to the divisional round. We're going to start in the AFC once more times. The Ravens and Bills. If this happened, this would be a very, very fun game. I'm going to choose the Ravens. I just think offensively, they might have a little bit more firepower with Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry. You would hope Zay Flowers is back. And I think if the Ravens can really control the ground game with Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry, I think they could definitely give the Bills a run for their money. We saw that earlier in the season, right? So it's really going to be a battle between the probably top 2 favorites for MVP this season, and I think the Bills have a chance to beat the Ravens. It's the playoffs. Josh Allen's going to be playing really good, right? I think this defense could be solid, but ultimately I think the Ravens just have a little bit more firepower at this point in the game, where I think they ultimately win it. And it's different. I think the question for NFL is if you want to make it far, you do want to have a really good built team. I think when you look at like the NBA, having just superstars beats a really good built team for the most part. But I think it's kind of the opposite for the NFL, and I think ultimately the Ravens overall have a better built team. The defense, we'll see what happens with the defense, but ultimately I think the Ravens just have a little bit too much firepower versus the Bills. The Chargers versus the Chiefs, NFC West rivals. The Chiefs are going to win. They've dominated this division. I can't see the Chiefs losing in their first game. I think Patrick Mahomes is going to be just fine. I think, they're coming off the bye week. People are going to be healthy. And, again, John Harbaugh. Or is it Jim? I forget. I'm not good with the Harbaugh names. But he's going to be coming to want to, of course, take down the Chiefs. This team is not going to back down, and there's a good chance it's going to be a close game. But I think when you come into those close games, I can't bet against the Chiefs in close games because they have the experience to ultimately close them out with Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, their defense, Chris Jones, Trent McDuffie, right? And then, of course, Andy Reid, Steve Spagnuolo. That's just a good coaching staff. And I think when you have these close games, the Chiefs are going to win. So I think if you want to beat the Chiefs, you got to set a decent lead. On to the NFC, the Vikings versus the Eagles. this is going to be a good matchup, right? I think on paper the Eagles look like a better team, but I think if the Vikings are rolling, from the game versus the Rams, I think this defense has a chance to be really good in the playoffs with Brian Flores. I think he's going to figure things out. You know, Eagles, of course, they have Jalen Hurts. They have the receivers, Saquon Barkley. The defense has been playing really good. I'll be honest, this one is just more of a feel than a logical pick, right? You kind of have to have those upsets, really, even though I think they are on a very similar level. But in terms of seeding, I'm gonna have the Vikings beat the Eagles. That's kind of where I'm sitting at. I think the Vikings have a chance to go on a run this postseason, and I think they're gonna beat the Eagles because the Eagles they're capable of really blowing things. And I'm not saying they're gonna blow a big lead, but just like the chance that they have with the roster they've built, it's one of the best in the NFL. And I think you will see how good Jalen Hurts plays. I'm not saying Jalen Hurts is going to be bad by all means, but can he be that Jalen Hurts that we saw just a few years ago, or is it going to be just kind of average Jalen Hurts? We'll see. But I think the Vikings ultimately win this game. The Commanders versus the Lions, I'm going to go to Lions. The Lions in the NFC right now just seem unstoppable. The Commanders, I mean, they could put up a good fight with the Lions. I think there's definitely a chance, but I wouldn't be surprised if it is more of I wouldn't say blowout, but there's a little distance between the two in terms of score. If this was the case of the matchup, right? And the Commanders have a chance. There's a chance they have that firepower. The defense is a little banged up there for the Lions, of course, but ultimately, the Lions just seem a little too good for the Commanders right now. So let's move into the championship games. In the AFC, the Ravens versus the Chiefs. This would be a really good matchup. Of course, two of the top teams in the NFL as a whole. For me, it's just hard to pick against the Chiefs. From the beginning of the season, it's the Chiefs. It's hard. I don't know what else to say. They have Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid. That's just the duo you do not want to play against at Kansas City in the AFC Championship round. The Ravens have a chance to go out there and beat them, of course. Derrick Henry, their offense is really good, and could give the defense trouble. Right, the defense isn't bad by the Chiefs, but it's not what it was last year. So the Ravens, if they play their cards right, they have a chance to really take over this game and maybe exploit this defense a little bit for the Chiefs. But right now, I just kind of keep going with the Chiefs. And then to the NFC, this would be a really fun matchup once again, the Vikings versus the Lions. It would be the third time this season that they would play each other, and this one, of course, for the biggest and the most marbles for the Super Bowl. And the thing is, it's hard to beat a team three times. It's really hard to beat a team three times. To beat a team two times is really hard, but to beat a team three times is even harder. I think the Vikings, Kevin O'Connell, are gonna have they would be ready to play. Aaron Glenn is a mastermind defensively, right, and really put all the chips on the table with going man coverage and blitzing Sam Darnold, and it worked. I think if the Vikings were to play the Lions again, I think Sam Darnold would play better than he did this past week, and I think Kevin O'Connell would come to play even better. And I think offensively and defensively, from the Vikings defensively, Brian Flores, he's gonna have to make some changes, right? Brian Johnson has pretty much won the series 2-0. Obviously, really been kind of beating Brian Flores because Brian Flores, he loves the blitz, but the Lions do really well at audibling, making checks, and beating the blitz. And so the Vikings are gonna have to figure out something else, and I think there's a chance they will. And so I'm going to go with the Vikings. It's going to be a Super Bowl between the Kansas City Chiefs and the Minnesota Vikings. And, we talk about the Chiefs. A chance at the three-peat. Vikings chance at their first Super Bowl? Or have they won one before? Sam Darnold. Where is this Sam Darnold come from? He's now in the Super Bowl, right? It's going to be tough because I think both defenses are going to play really well. Even though I think there's a chance it could be a pretty high-scoring game, I don't think it's going to be a offensive juggernaut of a game, right? Both teams are going to get their touchdowns, but I think it could be a stagnant game the farther and farther you get into the game. And not because it's sloppy offense, because it's good defense like we saw last year. And it's just, when it comes to these games, I can't bet against the Chiefs. I can't doubt the Chiefs until they give me a reason to. So if that being said, I will be picking the Chiefs. I think they will three-peat. I thought they would three-peat at the start of the season, and I think they do it again. And so that's my prediction on the whole NFL playoffs during wildcard weekend. It's early Super Bowl prediction, but that's what I'm going for. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace out.